Top Trump administration officials said Sunday that more than 50 countries have reached out to the White House, ready to negotiate the terms of tariffs expected to hit their respective countries. Vietnam, Cambodia, Italy, Lesotho and South Africa have expressed a willingness to work with the Trump administration. Lesotho was the hardest hit by a 50% tariff, which Trump levied after claiming that the country imposes a 99% tariff on U.S. goods. However, Lesotho's government has said it's not sure how Washington arrived at that calculation. Benjamin Netanyahu could be the first world leader to discuss tariffs face-to-face with Trump, as the Israeli Prime Minister plans on visiting his U.S. counterpart Monday. Full story. Since Donald Trump unveiled his sweeping tariffs plan on Wednesday, April 2, otherwise known as Liberation Day, more than 50 countries have reportedly reached out to the U.S. and are ready to begin negotiating the new import taxes, top administration officials said Sunday, April 6. Among the countries hoping to mitigate the worst impacts of the tariffs are Cambodia, Vietnam, Italy, Spain and Lesotho. However, despite some countries' willingness to work with the U.S., Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said new trade deals are not the kind of thing you can negotiate away in days or weeks, adding, the U.S. will have to determine if what the countries offer is believable. Vietnam hopes to bring its tariffs down to zero. Of the more than 50 nations that the Trump administration claims to be in contact with, Vietnam is reportedly considering removing all of its tariffs on the U.S. in exchange for zero tariffs on its own goods entering the country, according to a telephone call that Trump had with Communist Party chief, To Lam. Vietnam is expected to face a 46% tariff beginning April 9. The U.S. decision to impose reciprocal tariffs is inconsistent with the reality of bilateral economic and trade cooperation and does not reflect the spirit of the Vietnam-United States Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, said Vietnam's Deputy Prime Minister Bui Thanh Son. Meanwhile, in neighboring Cambodia, Prime Minister Hun Manet wrote a letter to Trump hoping to stave off an impending 49% tariff. In the letter, Manet said that Cambodia would reduce its 35% maximum tariff rate to a 5% applied tariff rate on 19 of its product categories. Cambodia proposes to negotiate with your honorable administration at the earliest convenient time and wishes to request that your esteemed government consider postponing the above-mentioned tariff implementation, Manet wrote in the letter. Indonesia also has no plans of retaliating against the U.S., and will instead send a high-level delegation to the U.S. for trade negotiations. In the meantime, Chief Economic Minister Airlangga Hartarto said the Indonesian government will support its vulnerable footwear and apparel industries, while potentially increasing its trade relationship with Europe to offset losses in the U.S. The approach was taken by considering the long-term interest of bilateral trade relations, as well as to maintain the investment climate and national economic stability, Airlangga said. Italy's Meloni doesn't want to weaken the West. Over in Europe, meanwhile, Italy's far-right Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, said Trump's tariffs are wrong and do not suit either party, but added that her government would work with the U.S. on an agreement, with the aim of avoiding a trade war that would inevitably weaken the West in favor of other global players. On Saturday, April 5, Carlos Cuerpo, Spain's Minister of Economy, Trade and Business, also urged European governments to avoid a policy of retaliatory tariffs, calling them damaging for all. South Africa, which was hit with a 30% tariff, said it too is looking to negotiate a deal. According to the office of President Cyril Ramaphosa, the tariffs affirm the urgency to negotiate a new bilateral and mutually beneficial trade agreement with the U.S., as an essential step to secure long-term trade certainty. And the hardest hit of all of Trump's tariffs, Lesotho, said it would urgently send a delegation to the U.S. to negotiate a workable arrangement, according to the Associated Press. Lesotho was hit with a 50% tariff after Trump accused it of leveraging a 99% tariff on U.S. goods. However, Lesotho's government has said it doesn't know how the Trump administration arrived at the figure. On Monday, April 7, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to meet with Trump and discuss the 17% tariff that's about to hit his country.